We'd like to welcome all our viewers to another episode of Harbor Rock Wealth Management's podcast series, Life, Health, and Wealth, where we discuss financially driven topics and how they relate to our financial lifestyle, and where we are always unconstrained and unscripted. He's Reuben Smith. I'm Jimmy Luster, and today we have Jake Jerome here.
Welcome, Jake.
Thank you. You know, I appreciate it. One of the components of gratitude this morning is to have people like you guys in my life. Wow. So there's a degree of emotion that comes with that. I feel very blessed. I've got some great friends, great family, and to be at this stage in life and to be able to share conversations. And this moment, this is unscripted and raw, you know, so we're going to try to bring vulnerability definitely today.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate you guys.
Sure. Well, this is much anticipated, and I haven't known you as long as Reuben, but I remember the first time we sat down. I've never seen 2 hours go by faster in my life, and there was just a good connection. I like your vibe, and it kind of coincides with what we're talking about today, which is a topic of stasis. A lot of people out there might have an idea. We have quite a few folks out there that are pretty well versed in themselves and emotions and values, but they might not know how stasis really applies into our life. But before we jump into that, I always offer our viewers a couple sports stats of the day before we get a little deep there. Barry Sanders abruptly retired in 1999. We all knew Barry.
Sad day.
It was a sad day.
And I still have, so I've got a Barry Sanders rookie card, but I have the complete set. It's a 1990 score set, and it's still in the cellophane wrapper.
Sealed. Okay.
Sealed,
so now
dude.
so you have it. You just never seen it.
I've never seen that one. My brother has one in a little
But you know
plastic
you
thing,
have
but-
it.
Oh, I've got
It's
it.
there.
It better be in there.
Yeah.
Also in 1994, Kenny Rogers, not to be confused with Kenny Rogers, the musician, he didn't. But Kenny Rogers from the Texas Rangers pitched a no-hitter. It was a perfect game, rather. I'm sorry. The 11th in history. So that's pretty amazing. Unfortunately, it was against our Halos. But what are you going to do? And also 1984. So going back, I was 6 years old. We were all youngsters. 1984 was the opening day for the Los Angeles Olympics, which was pretty cool. I remember I was sharing with you earlier, you know, it was a special moment for me. I remember, you know, my big dad, police officer dad, you know, in his prime, and I had my arm around his gigantic leg, looking up at him, wondering where all these bikes were coming down Marguerite Parkway in Mission Viejo from some of the best athletes in the world. So it was pretty special to have all these people visiting right here in our backyard, and you know, being at such a young age, thinking, is this going to happen all the time?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, when you're young, you don't realize.
You want to go next week.
I got to see, so in 1984, we had just moved. My parents divorced or split up right around that time period, and we were living with my mom in West Covina. And so for the summer, we came with our dad in San Clemente, and we lived on Del Presidente over by Concordia Elementary School, right next to a Baha'i church. So for those people familiar with South End of San Clemente there. And the torch ran up our street.
Oh, yeah.
So kind of a similar thing, you know, everybody's lined up, very patriotic. And I remember my dad and people around saying, like, you guys won't realize this because you're too young, you know, but how important of a moment it was. And as best as my 6 or 7-year-old brain, you know, could comprehend at that time, it was, you know, it was a great moment to see the Olympic torch.
Very cool.
Yeah. And 84 is a great year for sports, you know, kind of Jordan emerged. The Lakers were running strong. There was a big basketball culture in LA.
Oh, yeah. I had my first James Worthy workout, I think 6 years old, Christmas. Mom and Dad started realizing that amongst other sports, big game James.
There you go. Very fitting.
Yeah, as Reuben's brother refers to me now, which is great. I love that. I had my Worthy running up my leg, all purple workout gear. I was down at the park by 9:30 Christmas morning shooting.
Nice.
You know?
Meanwhile, the rest of us are tube socks like Michael Cooper, you know?
I had more of a Cooper look,
Well, you guys met apparently in 8th grade. You guys go back quite a ways, and you're both locals of San Clemente here.
So I was thinking, it's probably been 30 years that I've known Jake. And
Yeah, at
going back
least.
to the-
So your brother and I were in 7th grade, and I'm a few years older than you. So
Yeah.
that was 1992-ish or something like
Yeah,
that.
so we're 30 years
31.
plus.
Yeah.
And Jake and I have also I've always had an interesting connection with Jake, and it goes above and beyond just a friendship. There's been something always intriguing about Jake, and genuine, and you know, an element of attraction that is just very very grounded, very, very down to earth, and we reconnected at our prior firm I think I sent Jake a text, "Hey, I'm working back in San Clemente now. Swing by when you can," and he'd come by periodically, and we'd catch up.
I remember.
Yeah.
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 We'll talk more on the topic of synchronicity, but one of the cool synchronicities was that one of my former coaches was one of your clients there. And I remember him, a lot of people, talked about San Clemente. Oh, we love San Clemente. We'd, love to go there sometime. And I remember Paul Koppas, Coach Koppas saying that, someday he's going to retire down there. And I ran into him, down at the beach, shortly after he retired. And I don't know if you told me he was one of your clients, or maybe he mentioned something about that,
Sure.
But that was kind of a neat way of connecting too. And, since then, every once in a while we'll pop in. I might have, financial questions. And I've always been connected to your family too.
Sure.
Naturally, I've got a great love for your brother.
Yeah.
Certainly your mom,
Yeah.
Smitty and bunko parties,
That's
that
right.
we've been
That's
a part
right.
of. And,
Yeah.
sleepovers. And we were always able to relate to sports. We collected sports cards, as kids. So there are a lot of wonderful connections. And I think at this stage in our life, too, appreciating each other's journey, and that's, again, the topic today around the idea of stasis. And stasis not necessarily being a bad thing. There's points where we need equilibrium. There's some big multiple syllabic words that are going to come out.
Yeah.
Sure.
Those
Sure.
might be tough sometimes on a guy that's had several head concussions and
You're
at
good,
45
man.
years
You're
old.
good.
Well,
You're
speaking of that real quick, can you guys relive 1995 San Clemente versus Mater Dei? I promised a couple of people that are going to be watching that you would do that today. It was a big time for the town, and I've now dubbed it the Terror at Thalassa for Mater Dei. Go ahead and relive that for a moment.
So I'm since I did not participate, I was in the stands. I was a sophomore year of football, so I was not on varsity. I was considered a Red Raider. We'll get into that.
Not Texas Tech.
Yeah, it was a different, it was more of a punching bag Red Raider. But
it's an act of service. It's a
service
position
forward. We're
within
always
a
talking
team.
about being service forward.
no I in team,
Yes,
right?
no I in team.
So yeah, that was the year that San Clemente finally beat Mater Dei. Jake, I think it was your senior year,
How cool,
and
yeah.
from a fan's perspective, it was just one of those moments.
Was it like a David versus Goliath thing? I mean, how good
Oh,
was Mater Dei back
absolutely.
then?
So at that time, those seniors had never lost a football game unless they lost in Pop Warner, right?
Oh, my gosh.
And
Yeah.
where that area is, I remember in Pop Warner playing for Dan Point, the Patriots had just launched, and we played teams, from Garden Grove, Santa Ana, Orange, and they stopped keeping track of the scores. They were so bad.
Oh, my
we
God.
got absolutely annihilated. And we were a new program, and South Orange County we just didn't have the culture, nor did we have a football mentality among a lot of our players. It was kids that went to swim practice for most of their lives, and all of a sudden, hey, there's a new football program. We're going to do that, So Mater Dei had a collection of kids that were football tested, and like I said, they had never lost. And there was a kid that should have been on that team named Michael Graham, and our freshman year, he didn't start the game, and then all of a sudden he comes in and he looked like a Barry Sanders. His build, he was
Oh, wow.
huge and fast. He touched the ball in the first half 7 or 8 times and scored on each play.
Wow.
That's the level of talent this kid had. Absolutely phenomenal. And as a freshman in California, you can't play at the varsity level.
Right.
His talent, he had some personal demons, and he was never able to actualize his football talent, but he played at various high schools. So they didn't have that talent, It would have been a different story maybe had he been on that team.
Sure.
Let's fast forward to 1995. Those guys hadn't lost. Their left tackle and defensive end was commit to Notre Dame. Their safety was going to USC.
They had some big-time guys.
Big time guys, and we had lost all the time. And I remember my junior year, I think we lost 35-7 or something like that. So in preparation for that game, we were a team that had an identity. We hadn't been healthy. We had played one nationally ranked team, our first game against Punahou in Hawaii, and we lost 20-6, and our offense gave up 14 points. So 2 touchdowns, So defensively, we played well. We weren't prepared with the heat, humidity.
Yeah.
But we had played a high-level team, right? They had D1 athletes. So for Mater Dei, we weren't intimidated. There was no intimidation factor. And we had somebody, Nelson, I think Nelson Cook's his name, and he delivered a pregame speech where he talked about, I think the power won, but I remember I'm a winner, you're a winner, and we're going to beat Mater Dei, right? So there was this affirmation that we were saying, right? And this was before I knew about the power of affirmations, but we believed it and we were fired up and we played that game intense. You know, it was intense the whole way. They made mistakes. We capitalized.
Yeah.
It was real physical. I was just talking to my kids the other day too. We were talking about the mentality required in a game like that and the level of focus. And, you know, we were constantly hitting dudes. And you can do that then. Right now you get flagged. But if it was a pass play and I was done off my block and, you know, I'm rushing the quarterback and I turned around and if there was a lineman standing, you just go find his ear hole and blast him.
Right.
Yep.
So, and we did that as a team. We executed well. So I think that translated to the stands where people saw this game where they were competing, right?
We had
So
a chance.
here's
Yeah,
top
it was
5 team in
different.
the country,
Well, it was
modern
clear
day.
you were going to leave it all out on the field.
Yeah, and we did. So it was neat as a player. It was really cool to be a part of something where it was super intense the whole time. In fact, when it was 23-17, we had the ball. There's a little bit of time left, and defense is on the sideline. I remember saying, like, somebody, like, we're going to get this. And I was so focused, man. I think it was Andy Wiggins. I was like, dude, shut your mouth. This game's not over yet, you know? So, like, not until the final thing rings. But
Shut your mouth.
so it was great for a community team, right?
Yeah.
So now we've got the hashtag One Town, One Team in San Clemente. And I think a lot of people connected with the individuals. You know, high school teachers still talk about the cast of characters that made up our friends group and whatnot.
Sure.
So that's what helped it make it a lot more special. And it's just
We can't
really
we
cool
can't
moment.
talk about that game too. There's plenty of stars on the field, and
Sure.
it was a great atmosphere. But I'll give a shout out to my brother who is the slot receiver. I'll call him 5'7", but
Tenacious guy.
obviously not someone that Modern Day was targeting in that game. And I believe the first 3 or 4 plays were 10-yard outs to my brother. Just boom, boom, boom. And before we knew
Bravo,
it, we were
yeah.
up the field
Yeah.
30, 40 yards. They had no idea what was going on, and we went and scored. So
Amazing.
Anyway,
Well, thanks for sharing that. I had never heard any of that story. So, you know, I didn't go to high school locally. I was at Santa Margarita. I was like the 4th or 5th class going through there. And we were building our sports programs at the time, being a young school. So I definitely understand that sense of unity and being on a mission and accomplishing that mission myself in my sports history too. So that's awesome. Appreciate you sharing
It
that.
is cool. Yeah, absolutely. And those were seeds that were sown. You know, you talked about me being a community mentor where, you know, I came back after college. In fact, right when I graduated, and this, I guess we'll kind of get into my personal bio and transition that direction. When I graduated college, that day of graduation, I received a phone call from Bernice Air Middle School here in San Clemente. Actually, it was Mark McElroy, who was my football coach. Later became the head coach at Saddleback, and we're still close to this day. He called and said, you know, I talked to this new middle school we have in San Clemente. Heard you're kind of interested in being an educator. Would you be interested in, you know, coming back home? And at that time, my prospects were Pomona, Whittier, El Monte,
Yeah.
Azusa.
And you're going to do what you got to do for
Abs-
family and what, you know, thinking about that. And
Yeah, and there were a lot of days, you know, when it's 100 and something, and you know, 2 days, you know, playing football and stuff up there, and those hot days where I would pop in the summer. You know, that was my way of connecting with the ocean. You know, so the opportunity to come back, and I was very focused on serving my community. You know, being an educator was important to me. There was a lot of purpose in that. There were a tremendous amount of people that invested into youth through sports, and I felt like I wanted to be a part of that cycle, you know, and giving back. So that worked out well. You know, my career at Azusa, we won a national championship in 1998. We had a great team success. You know, as you progress through sports and at different levels, you deal with personal injury. But through that, I had opportunities to public speak. And I remember speaking at a Super Bowl, the Super Bowl event at a church in Pasadena. And it was a lot larger audience than I anticipated. And I was up there with Jackie Slater, another guy who had played with the Los Angeles Raiders. So they participated and played in Super Bowls. And then there was this guy from Azusa Pacific, you know, from me. And I had a chance to kind of share my story and relate to the people in the audience. So, and I didn't have anything really prepared, you know. I had an idea. But I remember talking to the audience about we're not all going to be the Super Bowl heroes. You know, these guys have these experiences, and it's not to diminish any of their accomplishments or burn their candles out so mine could burn brighter, but to relate to people in the audience that that we're going to face trials and tribulations. Things
Sure.
are going to come up. And what is our perspective? And I'm 21. Really, what my great tragedy was what I, got injured a few times and
Sure.
lost starting positions or whatever the case was.
Yep.
But again, great team success. I was a team captain. I was even voted most inspirational, which I was embarrassed
Attaboy.
with. And,
Attaboy.
and that comes
No.
up with that, right? And so now to be in a place, with my confidence, it's, I recognize that what people appreciated is that I didn't give up on the team. I didn't put my ego or my own, I finished the race. I did the best I could with the situation I had and what I was given. But I think I remembered a lot of people afterwards coming up to me and they were able to relate to that story. It's awesome seeing people that have succeeded at a high level. I think to be able to connect with people within our own stories, there's a lot of meaning in that as well, and so that helped solidify the fact that I want to be a part of the human experience with other individuals, and so I got into education.
No, that's perfect. That's a perfect transition into our topic today of stasis. So I was doing a little research on stasis. It's not something that I'm super well versed in, but the idea of it made sense to me. So stasis is no action, no progress, no movement, right? And today we're talking about breaking stasis. Why don't you provide some color and elaborate on what that means and how you apply that into your life?
Yeah, absolutely. And this was a topic when you guys brought the idea of the podcast to me, I threw some ideas, some different things out to Ruben around finances, and we'll circle to the financial world at some point. But I think to explore the concept fully too, we look at the idea of as stasis. So there's inactivity. It also means equilibrium. And so within our own bodies, right, homeostasis allows us to experience the highest level of, this physical experience. Regulation of blood temperature, our different systems functioning. So there's great purpose in the idea of stasis and equilibrium. Also in our personal lives, right? So at home, you want relational stasis, right? So you would want a state of equilibrium within your household so that there's balance, harmony, higher vibrational emotions, and just states of being.
But so we're going to talk about stasis as well. We're going to talk about breaking stasis and getting out of that comfort zone, or we were talking about it earlier. Is stasis is safe? Isn't it safe? I mean, we are creatures of habit, patterns of behavior. Right? We wake up. 2 weeks ago, there's an accident on the freeway, and it took me 2 hours to get to work, and my day was ruined because I didn't have my coffee.
Your routine was off.
Between 8 and 8:30. And I got to work, I had my coffee at 10:30, and my whole day was off. But
I'm a creature of habit. And it doesn't have to be something that's completely broken to stay in it. Like, things are, you hear, how are you? I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine. It's something we throw around, but what does fine mean? And I don't know. It can be a dangerous word. If
fine means the loop's continuing.
Sure.
Well,
The pattern of life.
Right.
Everything's fine. I'm fine.
We're
I'm
cruising.
good.
We're cruising.
Yeah. There's a certain threshold of my experiences,
Great.
and I'm right
How are
within
you?
that right now.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's I think a lot of power within understanding the idea of stasis and equilibrium. When you look at the second definition, inactivity, that has a little bit of a different meaning to us because as human beings, I believe it's our innate nature to be a part of the creative process, to be engaged in life. And one of my core beliefs, so if somebody were to ask you guys, what's the purpose of life? I ask my students that sometime, and I know that, a 12, 14, 13-year-old kid's not going to be able to answer that necessarily. Or they repeat what they've heard based on the religious background, or philosophies within the home.
Yeah, or that your parents, right?
Yeah. But I think in moving forward in life or engaging in the life process, having a foundation of what that answer is to you is extremely vital in being able to participate in the dance of life and not be in a place where you're a victim. We'll talk a little bit more about, is life happening to me or is life happening for me right now?
Sure.
And we'll use the word of life. Some people might put in universe, or some people might say, God giving me things, or whatever
Sure.
the case is. It might look different. We'll use the term life. I think
Sure.
it's more universal. So circling back, my foundational core belief is that the meaning of life is to be the best version of the highest vision I have for myself right now. Because that's going to change. A year from now, that'll be different.
Sure.
If I'm involved in my life process.
Well, let me ask you. Well, I already know the answer, so maybe, but why is it different? For when you said what is the meaning of life, to me is my initial thought was willingness to expand.
Okay.
So willingness to take on whatever life is going to present me, and we'll get into that whole: is it happening for me? Am I the victim? I can safely say that this would not be happening. This podcast, Harbor Rock Wealth Management, would not be here if it wasn't for my own personal journey, my own expansion, and willingness to be vulnerable, willingness to fail. There's a lot of, I get the idea of breaking stasis and breaking the mold, but there's a thing that comes with it, a component of that's very scary, and freeing at the same time. So
let's talk about that. Well, how do you become brave enough to be emotionally available, and how do you jump into that? Like, because there's got to be a fine line of, well, are you prepared to do it? You still have to prepare yourself to do it. Because let's say you have a family and you're like, you know what? I'm going to take on some new things, and I'm going to find my creative side, and I'm going to go jump out there and jump away from maybe this job that I'm not enjoying, I'm not fulfilled. But there's some responsibility that you have to maintain too. Where do you find the medium in there to be able to do that?
That's a great question. And I think what'll give a little bit more credence to us talking about this is recently we've all made some changes in our professional lives.
Sure.
To break that stasis. There's I don't know if you call it an axiom, a saying in spirituality that's come my way. It's that pain will push you forward, or vision will pull you forward. Regardless, there's going to be change, So for me individually, it was in a period where I was growing a lot. I really dove into self-growth, spiritual work, and that was great for me relating to life differently, the professional aspect of myself, the health and wellness. I worked through a autoimmune disease. So it served me at a wonderful level to pull myself out of this and become a new version of myself. The problem is I didn't feel like I was able to actualize fully who I was in the professional setting that I was in. Became very frustrated. And that manifested itself as a lot of frustration. It impacted who I was at home. I'm sure it impacted who I was in front of the people that I worked with, coworkers, and I'm in front of kids every day. So I've talked about in the community, being a public figure, but they're the canary in the coal mine. You can tell when kids are having a good time or when they're not. And I don't know that they would notice those changes, but I knew that I was frustrated with not being able to fully be myself.
Well, we carry energy with us.
Mm-hmm.
We carry different frequencies.
Absolutely.
So when we are fulfilled and we are present and we are, when we're
in a state of joy, when we're in a high state of joy, we're engaged in the process.
Yeah.
Everybody has antenna, right?
But,
so that's the unseen.
Right.
Yeah,
But not there. Verbal. It does not. You don't need to verbalize that.
Mm-hmm.
You could just walk into the room.
Totally.
And you see your students, and they pick up on it. They may not know what they're picking up on.
Right.
But they know it's a safer place, or it's a more joyful place, or
Yeah. Well, we talked about that the other day of, those certain people that you're just drawn to. Mm-hmm. Like everyone wants to be around them. Like, and you don't know what it is, and you don't even have to really talk a lot. You just feel good. You feel at peace. You feel like they make you your best self. They inspire you without even knowing why. Mm-hmm. And it's magnetic. They have this attraction. And every once in a while you come across that, like, we're all in the people business, right? And I can't even imagine how many people I've sat in front of and done business with in my life. But there's certain people I remember, I'm like, there's something about this person. I try to uncover what that is. You know, you're like, what's the sauce there? You know, what are they doing that? And they just seem so free and doing well. Maybe this applies to that theory of breaking stasis. Maybe
Absolutely it does.
And sometimes when you're digging in with them, you find out that there was trauma in their life.
Right.
And I was kind of talking to you in preparation for this show last week about who's more fulfilled, who's more accomplished, the person that's been knocked down, gotten up, knocked down, gotten up, had some success, failure, opportunity, and now they've arrived somewhere where they're fulfilled? Or is it the person that had just the smooth ride? Nothing against them.
Right.
Hey, congrats. You know, I'm sure there was a lot of hard work that went into what you did, but now you have a title, now you've arrived, but you didn't really have the adversity. Relating back to sports, how we talk about we learn so many life events on the sports field, some of the biggest moments I've learned are experiencing adversity, not the joy of the championship or the win.
Right.
But it's learning how to, I hate the word fail, but find opportunity in a traumatic situation to inspire you to, now you've taken a step back to move 3 steps forward in growth. And it makes you more present.
Well, and looking and finding the beauty or the purpose in those experiences. Yeah, it's fine to label it as failure. You know, and anybody that's worked in a creative process is comfortable identifying things as failure. That's how they've reached a place of a great invention or creating a new product or, you know.
Yeah, you've heard that
that's
story
new.
time and time again, right?
Absolutely. There's a word that was separated for me that helped me understand things differently, and it's the word mistake. And if you separate, you take out the MIS, you put a hyphen, and take. Take being an action or something, you know, we equate that to acting. And miss just didn't quite hit the mark in that, you know, and so that's all it was, you know. So a mistake is, well, you know, we'll retry it, we'll do it again.
Yep.
You know, it's another opportunity. A tough moment for the ego is a great moment for the soul. And that's something that
Love that.
I've had to come back to, and we all do, you know, but in not being attached to the idea of failure, you know, and now we have all kinds of sayings, failing forward or moving forward, or, you know, there's different ways that people create language around the concept, but it's not adding attachment to it, you know, and then being engaged in the process, you know, fully. And fully, FULLY. And I think about, you know, when you talk about what is that courage, it's willing to be a fool, FOOL. You know, are you willing to do something new? Are you willing to reach out in life and, you know, grab these new opportunities? You know, and so that's what I did. I was very frustrated and wanted to create change. I had ideas. I wanted to do more too. I was frustrated with the financial compensation within my job. And I wanted to experience myself as something different. And we're speaking on the professional side of things. You know, there's, I was part of a friend of mine wrote a book, and I helped out a little bit with that. And that's where this idea of stasis and breaking from that, I've had so many wonderful opportunities come my way as a result of, you know, kind of moving into this different creative space. But he wrote a book on the 7 dimensions of wellness. Could be a topic for another podcast, perhaps. But in that, understanding that, working through trials, working through tribulations, making mistakes, and being engaged in the process, a part of the ultimate, you know, fulfillment. There's, when I talked about I had a second thought come into my head that I want to circle back also, and it's the idea of how do you know when you need a change? What are you experiencing within yourself? And there's a part of the shadow self experiencing it as numbness. You become numb, right? A lot of times in our day, and we'll stick to the professional side. And that's kind of the idea of the 7 dimensions of wellness is that, you know, we're speaking a lot on the professional side of things. It could be relationships. Sometimes it's marriage. Sometimes it's, you know, not being able to find the right life partner. Maybe it's with finances. You know, you're in a place where you need to experience growth. It could be your health and wellness. So there's a lot of different aspects of the individual self. We're speaking more on the professional side of things, you know, for the sake of this conversation right now. So numb, this concept of numbness and having the level of awareness. I think self-actualization is key in this process. Know thyself, knowing yourself, and then recognizing, ooh, I'm in a place where there's a lot of negativity, low vibrational emotions perhaps. Something's got to change. sometimes that's weeks. For me, it was years. It was years.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And also not knowing how or having the tools to experience myself differently within my job. And I didn't necessarily need to leave. What I ended up doing, for the viewers out there, is after the pandemic, an opportunity arose for me to go part-time. We hired some people, our school grew to a place, and we were going to hire somebody part-time. And through meditation and just kind of that self-awareness, it's like, let me be that guy. Now, thank you to my wife, Amanda, for saying yes to that. She's got a job. She works at Irvine Community College, and she supported that. Where I'm tremendously blessed in having her as a life partner is she allows me to fully be me.
Right.
No, I mean, there's a lot of great gifts out there. And I'm extremely grateful for that.
There's so much there that I want to. First of all, that's love. That's love in its purest form.
Mm-hmm.
Giving someone the space and the capacity to be themselves. No blame, no judgment.
Mm-hmm.
My personal experience on failing. Failure provides an opportunity for growth. It is the foundation of growth. Adversity, foundation of growth. When you find yourself in that numb state, in my personal experiences, I was subconsciously doing things that I said I didn't want to do. I've had in my upbringing, I've been exposed to some things that when I became an adult, I said, there's no way I want to do that. I'm not going to be that type of person. I'm not going to be that type of husband. I'm not going to be that type of father. And I had a rude awakening one day when I realized, thankful to my patient wife, that I'd become the person I said I didn't want to be. And subconsciously, I was numbing myself every single day. I was pointing the finger at other people. I was not happy. I was not fulfilled. And until I was able to own my past, my actions, without passing blame or judgment on myself, that's when I was able to open up, and I feel like that's when the world opened up to me for the possibility of breaking stasis. Of, okay, I am X, Y, and Z. I've done these actions. I am this type of father, partner, coworker, friend, brother, you name it. Now what do I want? I was living my life based off of what I felt I should be doing from a societal standpoint, right? We live in Southern California. I was the first one in my family to get a college degree, get a job, family, right house, right zip code. Don't have the white picket fence, but you see where I'm going.
You're
there.
good. You've arrived.
And
yeah.
on paper, socially, I had the good job. I mean, socially, and we could put on that face, we put on that facade that life was great, but deep down, I kept getting further and further away from who my authentic self was, and I had no idea who my authentic self was until age 40. So some people that I've been on this journey with have brought up the question, well, wow, I can't believe I did that. I wasn't myself for 40 years, and they're looking at it as glass half empty. I'm thinking at it as, we don't use this phrase lightly, or this word lightly, but I'm blessed to have the second half of my life, to have balance and awareness of and control over the direction of my life, from a genuine loving standpoint, as opposed to going through the motions and just not really. I say going through the motions, that's being in stasis and not fulfilled.
Well, now you have a no regret approach. Now, looking back at that, you don't regret any of that. It's made you who you are now.
Well, yeah. So, okay, everything happens for me. everything. I'm a
Right.
believer in that everything happens for a reason. Now, we've all been through some. That's part of life, right? We've been through some very tough
Sure.
positions in our life, and everything led up to the point to where it was time for me to have this this awakening, if you will,
Sure.
or spiritual awakening. Yeah.
Sure. And I think that's a perfect moment to move into synchronization. I know that's a topic we wanted to discuss today. And you're talking about being in tune with your inner self, your inner well-being. From the 30,000 foot view, you had the perfect life.
Sure.
I mean, you were doing it. You literally probably had a white picket fence and some beautiful children and your wife, and she was supporting you as well. And you were having some good times, and you were cruising, going back to that.
When someone was asking me how I was doing, I was saying, I'm fine.
I'm fine. I'm fine. How are you? Redirect, right?
Right.
But in synchronization, so the first thing I think about in synchronization, and Jake, you might have a different thing to talk about or represent that today, I think of jazz. So jazz to me, and what I read about synchronization are different wavelengths, frequencies coming together to start moving together. And I think of jazz. I'm a big fan of jazz. And if you've ever seen a true jazz show with the band leader, maybe a bass player standing in the middle, starting us off with a rhythm, and then you have a drummer coming in, these are all different instruments, and they're playing almost a different beat. And if you think about it, it's organized chaos. And all of a sudden, in this jam session around minute 10 or 12, you were just vibing. And you're like, I can't believe all these different people playing these different instruments are now playing this chaotic rhythm, but it's working, and I like it.
There's a component of beauty too. You experience it at a deeper level, and we'll end or move towards the concept of beauty. But what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is take that concept of talking about the synchronization and the jazz music. I like that analogy a lot. But in moving to that place where you're engaged in the process of coming out of this stasis, right? This equilibrium or this state of inactivity. You want something different. It's embracing that numbness, that pain, that anger. Rage Against the Machine in their song Freedom, Zach De La Rocha says, anger is a gift. And so sitting in that, and that's uncomfortable.
Right.
But embracing it. And it might be weeks, it might be months before you have that opportunity, that catalyst to take you into something different. Maybe it's you have a Jerry Maguire moment, and I've had enough, I'm leaving, I'm done. But it's embracing that numbness and having that self-awareness to be fine being uncomfortable. And, I've gotten into, I bought a sauna, for my house. I had one this morning. We were joking.
Jealous,
I showed up. I was hoping that I could stop sweating, man. I couldn't get my body temp down. But on the other part of that too, I've gotten into ice baths, and so I've kind of transitioning now to the cold shower doesn't quite do it for me. And I've done, quite a few ice baths for a couple of reasons: to learn how to manage stressful environments, and creating a stressful environment within the self, working on the breath, blocking out that discomfort. It also is a way to shake up stasis within my life, right? So I can do something for 30 minutes that now in my day, like I'm cool with whatever's going on because I've had that personal challenge, right? That physical, mental, spiritual challenge. So embracing the numbness. Now the idea of synchronization and moving into this moment of creativity or this experience of creativity. One of my core beliefs is that the highest human experience we could have is when we're in the creative process. And for me, what I believe no other greater creative experience is than, with giving birth to children, right? That act of being in a relationship with somebody and then consciously and with intent creating two new human beings and then engaging in that, right? Other people might disagree or have their own, which I can live in a world where that's fine. So for me, that's the highest form of creativity, but I am in the greatest state of joy and I experience beauty at the highest level is when I'm in that creative space. And for people that have done musicians, I'm not. Music to me is like magic, where I enjoy experiencing it from this side of things, to watch that bliss of somebody performing or, hearing different genres of music and the way it impacts us on a mental level, an emotional level, We all relate to music differently.
Mm-hmm.
So the point of that is stepping now into create this creative space, and that does require courage. It requires vision. So what tools then do we draw upon in entering into something like this? Because we've done it. We've been a part of it, and for me, it was meditation and that time of contemplation. Being able to sit still. Well, I've got two kids, a wife. I'm coaching sports. Got a job. There's plenty of things going on to where it is challenging to find that time. But breaking stasis from my professional life, I realized I need time to not only participate in different things, I need that time to work on myself, to have that contemplative time to now enter into that creative space where synchronization now comes in. I think it's the universe coinciding for a greater good. I think when we step into that moment where we're embracing life, we're reaching our arms out and we're being the fool, it's uncomfortable, it's scary, but I believe that like the laws of gravity worked, I think the universe is there to support us in it, in that process.
I love that. I think we attract to like-minded people. There's a reason why we're here. In a former life, call it 5 years ago, I would attract to different levels of people. And nothing wrong with it. Everyone's on their own path and they're doing their own thing. But I was attracting to people that weren't feeding me, weren't complementing my energy, weren't I wouldn't say that, weren't getting me to where I was an authentic person, where I could be authentically. And to be fair, I didn't know who I was, so I was essentially just lost. I want to put a financial spin on this, if you don't mind. So, with Stasis, there's as we all know, finances, personal finance, investments, financial planning can be debilitating. It can be paralyzing. It's very emotional, and we find a lot of times our clients, for lack of a better term, can't get out of their own way. They're stuck, and it's predominantly fear-based. They've had a bad experience somewhere else, or maybe their trusted media source or news outlet has them scared. And one of our jobs as advisors is to provide that unbiased advice, and coming from a place of authenticity and in a way love, right? Because there's an element of care or loyalty that we have over our clients. And our job is really to get them to break stasis when it's appropriate. Now, there are plenty of clients that are in it, given where their goals are, what their objectives are, how much risk, they're completely fine. So there's not a lot of adjustments that need to make. But more often than not, there's a tweak that needs to be made, and that is an element of breaking stasis. So we are their guide, right? At the end of the day, they make all the decisions, right? It's our job to come at them from that unbiased perspective and hold their hand.
Sure. And once again, time flies when we're with you. And I definitely feel a repeat guest coming on for sure. And it's kind of a nice tease into maybe behavioral finance.
Yeah.
It's something that you can definitely help us unpack.
Absolutely.
From that end on the professional side, and continue to elaborate on maybe why we don't make certain decisions.
Why people do the things they do.
Sure.
Yeah.
But thanks for being a great guest, Jake. Once again, I'm gonna need time to unpack everything that we've talked about today. I knew this was going to go to a different place today, and that was just the tip of the iceberg. So we'll hope you join us again sometime soon. And to all of our viewers out there, thank you for joining us once again in our digital barbershop, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.